personality, achievements, skills, relationships, appearance. Richella Parham was haunted by thoughts of not measuring up. She writes, "No matter how well-intentioned the teaching or pithy the advice, I found that most of it didn't help me change." She discovered that cultural and spiritual myths about others, God, and ourselves keep us trapped. From there, she found that the journey is a spiritual one. If you've ever suffered from tortured moments of comparison on Facebook, in the office, or in the hallway at church, you'll benefit from this fresh perspective. Welcome to the Unhurried Living Podcast. For those of you who participate in a Lenten practice, we wanted to let you know that Alan's book, Inhaling Grace, now includes a Lenten reading guide. The first day of Lent is coming up on February 26th, so we'd love for you to order your copy today at unhurriedliving.com/grace. We'll also be engaging our Unhurried Lent Facebook group throughout Lent, so we hope you'll join us there. Just go and search Facebook for Unhurried Lent. So today we are, in fact, talking about comparison. And whether we admit it or not, this is a pervasive issue in our culture right now. And Richella Parham has written a timely book called Mythical Me, Finding Freedom from Constant Comparison. So here's a little bit about Richella. In addition to Mythical Me, she's the author of a spiritual formation primer and a blogger at impartinggrace.com. She serves as the vice chair on the board of directors at Unhurried and is a member of the Redbud Writers Guild. Richella lives in Durham, North Carolina with her husband, Jack. So I found Richella to be an engaging and highly intelligent woman with a warm and spacious heart for God and for people. And I loved talking with her, and I know you will love hearing her. So here's our conversation. Enjoy. Well, Richella, it's so good to connect with you here on the podcast. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and we missed your actual launch, but here we are anyway. So welcome.
Oh, right. And I have been advised to think in terms of a launch year.
Yes.
So that's what I'm trying to do.
That sounds good. I guess we should be thinking the same way. Yes. A launch year. It's like a birth month.
I guess so. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So anyway, it's welcome. I wanted to tell people actually how we met. And it's interesting because social media, people sort of bag on it all the time. But we actually found each other on Instagram.
That's right. Yeah.
And I'm not even sure how. Somehow we followed each other.
Well, I think probably I had heard of you from a number of different people. So we know some people in common, right?
Right. That's probably how.
And so I can't remember who followed whom first, but at some point when I realized you were the Jim Fadling of the Jim and Alan Fadling, I'm like, oh, of course. Boom, follow,
Yes. And I must have done the same thing in reference to knowing your connection to Unhurried. You know how it is. It tells you like, you might like this person.
Exactly.
But once we started chatting there, we found out that we have so much in common. Like it's a little scary.
It is a little bit scary, right? Yeah.
Right? I think without saying it, I think we're the same age.
I think we are. Yes.
Been married the same number of years.
35 years this June.
Yes. And May for us will be 35. We have
so just so everyone knows, that means we got married when we were 12.
Oh, right? At least. Yeah. Yes. Maybe 11. Oh my goodness. Yes. And then we have we both have 3 sons.
Yep. 3 young adult sons. That's right.
Are they all in their 20s?
They are. Mine are 22, 26, and 28.
Well, there you go. And we have 21, 24, and 27.
Yep.
So, and I think, and our books came out like within a month of each other. Isn't that right?
Exactly. Yes. So October 22nd was my book release, and yours was
September 17.
Yeah. So almost exactly a month apart. Yeah.
I remember that date because it was the birthday of my firstborn son. So
Oh,
it was very
oh,
easy
how
to remember.
nice. Yes. Yes.
So anyway, now that we've told everybody all the ways we share things in
Right.
common.
Clearly, right? I mean, this age of woman must just be magical, right? Because look at you.
Here we are.
I want to be in your company.
It's really fun to share that much in common. And just the
Yeah.
time we shared last fall at the Apprentice Gathering was so wonderful just to meet you. And you are as
Right.
dear as I had presumed by seeing your
Oh,
Instagram feed.
aren't
So
you kind? Well, I mean, I felt that it's actually very reassuring, isn't it? To
yeah,
know that while it may not always be true, probably more often than not, it is true that people who present as kind and loving on social media turn out to be kind and loving in real
yeah,
life.
it's
So
true. It's true. There's a lot of good out there. So
that's right. Yeah.
we're proving it right now.
There you go.
So before too much time passes here, why don't we dig in? I wanted to actually talk to you about your book, which is called Mythical Me,
Hmm.
and the whole idea of comparison, which I think is universal. And right?
Sadly so, yes. I mean, well, actually, one of the things I talk about in the book is that there are lots of kinds of comparison that are good. Comparison is a tool that we use every day, and
Yeah.
it's not necessarily a bad thing. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, though, bad forms of it does seem to be pretty universal, and that's a shame.
It really is. Well, I wanted to
Mm.
start here with this question to get us rolling on this whole idea. And just why did the idea of comparison surface for you so much so that you decided to write a book about it?
Desperation.
Tell me more.
So at one point, I was trying to write an introduction to my book, and we later scrapped it. But my introduction said, "I've struggled with comparison more than any other person in the United States." North America, or perhaps the world, right? It's like
Right.
maybe this is the way I can win at the comparison game by saying that I struggle with comparison more than you struggle with comparison.
Right.
No, it has been a lifelong struggle for me, and actually, I you know I hate to admit it, but it's true that it paved the way for some relational difficulties.
Mm.
And because of those relational difficulties, I ended up seeking the services of a marriage counselor and then a therapist. And I hate to admit that I needed those services, but I'm so grateful that I got that help
Yeah.
because it was that therapist who helped me realize that this, in fact, had been a lifelong
Mm.
problem. My husband pointed out to me that I was doing it. And that was a long time ago. That was nearly 20 years ago that he pointed it out to me. But by then it was an entrenched pattern. I've struggled with this my whole life.
Yeah.
And, I came by it honestly. And in the book, I tell the little story of how I was born with a birth defect. And much of the right side of my body is covered with a birthmark. And so from my earliest years, I would look at myself and look at the other kids, and I knew that I did, it was the Sesame Street game. That one of these things is not like the others. I was always the one who was not like the others, and that's when it started. But it went on from there and became something that I did habitually. And my husband pointed out to me that I was doing it so often and with so many different people that I had developed a habit of noticing everyone's best attributes and then comparing myself to that particular attribute for each person.
Mm.
So, for instance, Jim, let's see, what's your most outstanding attribute? I mean, you are, well, there are a lot, but let's say you're deeply insightful, right? So I would hang out with you, and then I would say, why can't I be as deeply insightful as
Mm.
Jim? Or why can't I be as funny as James? Or why can't I be as poetic as whoever? I mean, you name it. I would always pick the best thing and berate myself that I didn't have that best thing. And my husband said to me, you've created for yourself this mythical composite woman made up of all these best attributes. And that's who you think you're supposed to be.
Oh, man, I can feel
Yeah.
all of that a little bit like a punch in the gut. I mean,
Right. Thank you for saying that. Because when he first said it, I was, let's just say, salty.
Right.
I won't say that I denied the truth of what he was saying, but I was pretty defensive at first. It felt, and I knew it was true, and it resonated at a deep level, but I didn't want to be like that,
Yeah.
But I had become exactly that way. So that's where the title comes from. The Mythical Me title comes from that long ago conversation about that mythical composite woman. But since then, I've discovered that other people do it too. And
I really
the best
resonate.
attributes, So the best attributes that you notice and aspire to might be different. I mean, you might have a mythical composite spiritual director.
Right.
Or a mythical composite author, or a mythical composite pastor, or whatever. But a lot of us do it to ourselves.
We do. And I know especially women, I don't want to segregate out here for all of our listeners, but I do know, because I'm a woman and I talk to a lot of women.
Right.
We tend to do this in spades. And, in the old days, before the computers and social media, you could just do it in your life with those people that you could see.
Right.
Or in maybe an advertisement, like there's a movie star or a model, and you would think, oh, I'm not living up to that. But now, in addition to that, we can, at any moment, look on our phone and see any one of our friends doing something amazing. And it adds to the pile of then my felt sense of, at worst, worthlessness. Right. And I don't know, at best, I'm not even sure what at best is.
Exactly. Is there even a best?
Is there a best?
Right. So certainly this problem of constant comparison did not originate with social media.
No.
But it's fair to say that with social media, it has gone viral. And it has. And especially with the advent of the smartphone, we have this handy little tool for comparison with us at all times, right? And it's a problem partly because of the way we allow it to be a problem, but a lot of times we're not really aware that we're doing it in the moment, and only when we can see the cumulative effects can we realize we need to do something about it.
Right.
So I was one of those cumulative effect persons, and that's what led me to write the book. I had reached a point, as I said, of desperation. I needed help, and I started looking for help. And I struggled to find anything of real substantial help around the problem of comparison. There was lots of cheerleading. And there's a place for that, right?
Yeah.
But I needed something that I could really dig, really get my teeth into, because the problem was so deep-seated. I needed some deep-seated help for a deep-seated problem.
So you decided to become the help that you needed.
Well, I hope, yes.
Yes. Well, I'll just say that you have. So, well, is there anything else about the whole culture that we're in right now, and especially with social media? Is there anything about that culture that you see? It kind of almost forces us, right, to create this mythical me.
Well, it is true. And there have actually been peer-reviewed studies now that have confirmed this. I mean, anecdotally, we sort of all know that it's true that people put their best foot forward on social media. But it's not just anecdotal. There's now scientific evidence that is what happens. People don't necessarily show the behind the scenes, and people do not do this malevolently. This is an an almost unconscious act. It's just like having a photo album of your wedding.
Oh yeah.
I can remember when I got married and we got the photos from the photographer. There's one photo of me with my parents, and the look on my father's face was that he would have liked to kill the photographer. I remember that moment. I think he was about ready to punch the photographer in the nose, and that's how he looked in the picture. Right? Well, we didn't buy that picture,
Right.
We bought the next picture where he was smiling, right? We just passed right over that one with the horrible look. It's the same thing. The photos we post on social media are never the ones of all the angst or all the struggle. We show ourselves crossing the finish line or wearing the medal from the 5K or whatever. We don't post the photos of soaking our feet.
Right. Because who wants to see feet? Nobody wants to see feet.
No one wants to see that. So it's just very easy to forget that everyone else is operating that way too. And so what we really are seeing is everyone's highlight reels. It's easy to forget that.
Right.
And I actually think that what we're seeing now with social media is just the 21st century version of the age-old heresy. I think it's modern day Gnosticism. We are, we're separating out the parts of our lives as if we were not all integrated beings of body and soul. We disembody people on social media. We tend to disembody ourselves and the other people. And I think that really does end up fueling comparison much, much more than face-to-face interactions.
Right.
And it can be bad enough with face-to-face interactions, but when you level all that on top of a tendency to compare, it can get out of hand.
Yeah. As we're talking about all these things so far, one of the things that's coming up for me is this idea of just having a self. I know for me, actually feeling like I had a way to come up against the pressure that I feel from this comparison thing that's going on. It got stronger as I got more into my own, I don't know, my own power. Do you know what I'm talking about? A woman's journey. Sometimes I was someone who, I don't feel like I had much of a voice for probably the first half of my life. And then, of course, the great undoing with midlife. You go in and you muck around and this new sense of, I think, I'm calling it a sense of self. I suppose we could say my true self really started to emerge.
Right. Well, I think what you're talking about is your true identity.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And because we have, I think, not just women, I mean, all people do this especially in our younger days, we're searching around we talk about finding ourselves.
Yes.
And I think a lot of that is just discovering our true identity. And, if we could honestly believe what God says about us to be true, then we could have a big head start on understanding our true identity. But most of us, I think, for most of us, it is a journey, sometimes a really slow journey, sometimes a terribly painful journey, sometimes a process of elimination, to finding that sense of self, as you said, of identity as one who is lovable and valuable and accepted. Because, Jim, it's an irreducible human need to be loved and accepted.
Yes.
This is not pop psychology. This is
right. Yes.
And but we have that need. And the truth from God is that we are loved and accepted.
Yeah.
That is who we are. And it is who we are because of the fact that we are children of God. We are made in the image of God. And yet we we struggle to believe who we really are.
Yeah.
So I do think you're right. When you talk about tapping into that power, it's tapping into the truth about ourselves.
Yes, and it's quite potent. And what you were saying about therapy, embarrassed that I had to go through that. At this point, I'm not really embarrassed to talk about my
Yeah.
therapy years because
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
true.
think you are either. But but that was really necessary for me. I dug in hard for a couple years, and I just went back through all the past stuff and just
Mhm,
got some really good psychological, emotional healing.
mhm,
And for me, and I would guess for many others, some who have been in therapy and some who have not yet, but probably want to or need to,
mhm.
sometimes you do have to let go of some baggage so that infilling of the reality can even reach you. That makes
Absolutely.
sense because, I mean, we
Mhm.
all know God loves us. We can say it out loud with our mouths, but
Right?
there's different levels at which we actually believe it in our bones,
That's right. That's right.
right? And so don't you think the
I think that's
healing.
exactly right. And you're right about letting go. You got to make room in your head and in your heart for the truth. I mean,
Yeah.
I could have told you 100 times a day that God loves you,
Right.
right?
Of
I
course.
knew that God loved the world. That God loves me, and moreover, that God actually likes me.
Mm,
You know,
yeah.
I think I had a really good sense of the fact that God loved the world, and because of that, He tolerated me.
Oh,
Right?
that's what you actually felt.
Hmm. Hmm.
Oh, wow.
And so yeah, I did need some professional help, and
Mm.
I think not everyone needs the same level of
Right.
professional help. And you're right, I'm no longer embarrassed by it, but I'll tell you what I am. I'm grateful for it, and I recognize that it was a huge privilege to get the help I needed.
Yes. Yeah.
And I would love to see people lean into getting help, asking help, and being help for others, because
Oh,
not everyone can, I mean, frankly, not everyone can afford the kind of help that I needed. I mean, I needed a professional, and I had to pay the professional. Not
yes,
everyone can do that. That's a position of privilege.
it is.
Um, Not everyone can afford the time that it takes.
Right.
It's just the fact of life. But a lot of what I gained in therapy might have been offered by um, a Christian mentor, someone who's
Mm,
further along in the journey,
mhm.
a trustworthy pastor,
Yeah.
a close confidant. Some of those things I might have been able to attain or obtain if I had known where to look, and if there were people who had sorted out their own stuff
Yeah.
enough to lend a helping hand,
Yeah.
right? I
That's true.
mean,
You really need someone who's lived it first. I don't think
mhm.
it's as helpful to have someone who only has what they think are the answers.
Oh no.
You need
You
because
need really good questions
yeah.
and a
Yeah,
willingness to sit with you in the uncertainty,
that's right.
and to I think so often of the conversation between Shrek and Donkey
Oh,
when they talk about layers. Do you remember from the movie Shrek?
it's been so long since
Right.
I've seen. Yeah, remind me.
My boys used to love to watch Shrek.
Yeah.
And Shrek and Donkey are talking about layers, and Shrek says something about peeling back the layers like an onion. And
Right.
Donkey says, "Nobody likes onions." It's like, "Don't talk about onions." He said, "Let's talk about cake." A cake has layers, and they go on to have a funny interchange about layers.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, I was more of an onion.
Yeah.
Peeling back those layers was not something beautiful and fragrant. And it wasn't like something that everybody loves, like a parfait. It was a smelly mess that I had to go through. And so I think someone who has all the ready answers, that might work for someone whose layers are just like a parfait. But for someone whose layers are complicated, you need someone who will sit with you and just help you peel that back and help you take it to God and leave it, rather than someone who can just give you the nice Sunday school answers and pat you on the head and send you on your way.
And I think most of us are onions. I mean, if there are parfait people, I just think there's hardly any.
Well, God bless them. I hope they are enjoying sweet
that
smelling.
life. Yes,
that's right.
You enjoy that life of yours. Oh, well, we've talked about this idea of comparison and kind of went into therapy and stuff. I'm wondering, can you share with us what you perceive to be some of the fruit of living a more comparison-free life, and maybe some steps? I'm not sure I want to use the word steps, but are there ways we can aim ourselves at that idea of letting go of comparison?
That's a great way to phrase the question, Jim, because I had someone once ask me if I could give some tips and tricks.
Right, hacks.
I thought, right, yeah, and I thought this is not a life hack kind of thing. Right. It really is. It's steps, and it's steps on a pretty big stairway. It's not just steps on a ladder and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, boom, you're there. It's a journey, and I think that, to answer your first question, the fruit of a life that is more free of comparison, well, I would immediately say that your question brought to mind the fruit of the Spirit. Because the things that the Spirit of God wants to bring about in our lives, the love and the peace and the joy and the gentleness and the self-control, all that fruit, that is so much more easily cultivated in a heart that's not burdened by comparison. It's as if comparison is a drought, maybe. I'm trying to work with that fruit metaphor. So if we are branches, abiding in the vine, the roots go deep and we are able to produce fruit. And comparison is like a drought or a blight that makes that fruit, makes it more difficult for that fruit to grow. So first answer is that fruit of the Spirit. In addition to that, I would say the fruit is just a life of contentment rather than clamoring. Often.
Talk about that.
Well, for me, when I see the fruit that other people are able to bear, very often, all too often, I want to have that kind of fruit, and my spirit just clamors for it. I just want it. I want what they've got. But that's what comparison leads to. And without the comparison, I'm able to say, wait, I'm so happy for what they've got because it's good. The world is a better place because you have your gifts. And I benefit from your gifts. I don't have to have them for myself. So contentment. But the other thing I really believe is true is that the fruit of less comparison is more joy because of where joy comes from. Joy comes from connection, Jim. So joy is part of the fruit of the Spirit, as I mentioned, but also joy can be used as a synonym for happiness, right?
Yeah.
Well, once again, with peer-reviewed studies, you've heard of the Harvard study it's like a longitudinal study, like 80 some years. There's been a study of people and how their lives have progressed and whether they have done well and whether they have thrived. And what's been discovered is that the happiness is found in people who are connected to other people. That's been the greatest indicator of happiness, is community.
Yes, that makes a lot
and
of
I
sense.
think comparison robs us of our joy because in its very essence, it's an isolating event.
Yeah.
When I compare myself to you, I'm putting me on one side of the scale, I'm putting you on the other side of the scale. Yeah. And I'll never reach you that way. But if I can lay that aside, then I can have connection with you. And that's where joy comes from. Connection to God, connection to other people. That's the source of joy. That's why I think that old adage, the comparison is the thief of joy. People say that as if it's because I can't appreciate what I have if I'm looking at what you have.
Yeah.
That may be true, but what I have was never the source of joy. Yeah. I think it robs us of our joy because it interrupts those connections. So greater connectedness is another fruit. So
oh man,
I could go on all day, but maybe that's enough for that.
No, that was good. I was actually furiously taking notes while you were sharing that, and I think you're just so right. I'm seeing a flow that has emerged here. Again, not that we're giving an answer, but the flow that I'm hearing, at least from this 30-minute conversation, is that there's an awareness that we can have that we are in fact caught in a comparison trap. We can get help to help ourselves make our way forward out of that trap. We can let God's love then flow into us more deeply. From that, then of course, now we have the fruit of the Spirit emerging more naturally. And then from that, we've got contentment instead of clamoring. I love that phrase so much because clamoring, you can hear it. It's like people who are in jail and they've got their cups.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Just the clamor. Contentment instead of that. And then joy emerging from contentment because we haven't isolated ourselves and we're in a community. Actually, hopefully, again, in our true identity, all building one another up. Now, we've just created sort of an idyllic situation, but I kind of like this process.
Well, and you're right, it is idyllic, but it can be realistic.
Yeah.
If we'll all start with ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And I think it starts with our ideas about God.
Yes.
If we can come to understand that God is good, that there's nothing bad about God, that God, this very good God, loves us and created us. Remember, we're created in the image of a community.
Yes.
God, as he reveals himself to, God reveals himself to us. This is very mysterious, but it is the way God reveals himself to us in the pages of Scripture.
Yeah.
As a community of three persons.
Yeah.
And that's who we're made in the image of. So I truly believe we were created for community because we were created by community.
Yes.
And in that community of persons who were willing to be themselves and freed from the notion that they have to be all that in a bag of chips. You just don't have to. That's the fruit of comparison, right? Is the feeling that you have to be, that you'll never be enough, that you have to measure up to everything. Well, actually, the truth is a lot better news than that. The truth is you are loved and accepted and not expected to be everything.
Right.
You are, that age-old question, am I enough? You are plenty to be you, and no one is enough to be everything. You don't have to be.
Right.
You can be your one piece of the big puzzle.
Yeah.
So if that's where we start, then your other question was, are there steps? And yes, I would say there are steps, because comparison, the way it manifested in my life and the lives of a lot of the people I see, comparison is actually a habit. It becomes a habitual action. It's not as though we are setting out to do it. Very often we wish we wouldn't do it.
Right.
But we've become habituated to it, and we do it daily, often hourly, sometimes minute by minute, just as a matter of habit. And habits can be replaced by other habits.
Right. Yeah.
Now, I honestly believe, I believe strongly, this is the point I make in the book, is that we have to start from the place of recognizing the truth about God and his goodness and his love for us and his presence with us, and the truth about ourselves as beloved. And then the truth about other people as also beloved children, not enemies and not people whom we need to impress, but fellow image bearers. If we start from that place of truth, well, then we can take steps to replace the habit of comparison with new habits. And I devote 3 chapters of the book to talking about those habit breaking things. Would you like for me to name a couple of them right now?
Why don't you name a couple of those?
All right. Yeah. Well, the first one I know will resonate with you. The first one I would name, because I know that you and Alan talk about this. First one's rest.
Of course.
Yeah. And it's true.
Yeah.
Rest, Jim, is particularly a difficult thing for someone who's stuck in constant comparison.
Yeah.
And here's why. If you're always feeling less than, if you're always feeling like you don't measure up, then every day is an opportunity to perhaps better yourself. It's push, 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 go, go, go. And that's the way we train ourselves to be. And it is very difficult to rest if what you've done all day long is push, 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 push. And at the end of the day, if you go over the list of things, if you have a litany of the ways you've failed to measure up, and then you wake up first thing in the morning thinking, you're breathless the minute you wake up, because you know you have more to do than you can accomplish.
Yeah.
That's what the life of constant comparison looks like. So the first very radical act, in fact, I would say rest can be actually looked upon as a spiritual discipline. We can say, okay, I don't actually have time for rest. This is not something that I'm equipped to do. But okay, I'll do it. Yeah. And it might mean that we need to take some melatonin. It might mean that we need to call our doctor and say, is there something that will help me sleep? Because I can't sleep. I don't know what it might entail. But lying down and going to sleep, and maybe sleeping for 8 hours, that's an act, I think, of radical trust.
Yes. Maybe the world could spin without me for a few hours.
Maybe. Maybe. And I also think that it's a spiritual discipline because it is often misunderstood. You know, if you spend time in solitude and silence and study and prayer and meditation, you might get accused of all kinds of things, right? Yeah. People might think you're nuts. And that's the way people might think of you if you devote yourself to rest as well. Yeah. You know, you might be accused of being a slacker. You might be accused of being uncaring. There's no telling. But God can handle it. Yeah. And so can you with his help. Yeah. So that's the very first thing that I would recommend.
That's wisdom, of course.
Second.
Yeah.
Here's one. incredibly practical.
Oh, good.
It's not nearly so poetic as rest.
Yeah.
I would say value your smartphone, but leave it in the other room when it's time to sleep.
Mm,
Buy yourself a cheap alarm clock
yeah.
to keep by your bed. And if your smartphone is your only phone, so you want it nearby in case of emergency, I get that. I understand that.
Yeah.
But most of us can plug it in the next room.
Yeah.
So that it's not right at hand.
Right.
Going to bed with our smartphones in our hands and using it as an alarm clock, so that's the first thing we touch in the morning, that's nonsensical.
Yeah.
That is soul deadening. And yet how many of us do it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's so convenient, right?
Totally.
Who needs an alarm clock?
Right. It's everything. The phone is everything.
Uh-huh.
The clock and the phone and the everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I
the
hear
fact
ya.
is, you need yourself a cheap alarm clock that you can probably find at Walmart or Target, or maybe at a thrift store, or maybe in your grandmother's attic.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are lots of places you can get a really inexpensive alarm clock, and let that be what wakes you in the morning, so that you're not tempted immediately to flip open your phone and start with Instagram.
Yeah.
Instead, start your day, I would say, with the Lord's Prayer before you get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
Before your feet hit the floor, place yourself in the Lord's care, remember, Jesus taught his followers to pray, Our Father, our Father right here with us, right, in the heavens. What he was meaning is that his Father is also our Father. So our Father right here with us. And we ask for his kingdom to come and his will to be done right in our lives, right?
Yes.
Not just in the whole wide world, but right here in my heart that is prone to comparison. Because God's will is for me to know that I am beloved and blessed.
Mm. Yes.
So that's a way to start the day.
I love it.
Yep. And lots more steps.
Yeah.
I mean, the journey is long.
It is.
But
well,
I do try to outline some concrete steps in the book that people can take. I don't have tips, tricks, and life hacks so much.
Right. That makes sense.
But I do try to lay out some steps that we can just put into place, because what we're doing is battling a habit.
Yeah.
And habits can be interrupted. There's been neurological research that shows that habits are deeply embedded in our brains.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so funny to me how many times back when I was trying to overcome the comparison thing, I would read a little something that would say, you just must stop comparing yourself to others because no one else is like you. So there. And I thought, okay. As if now that I know it's bad for me, I'm just never going to do it again. Right? I read one article, Jim, I'm not making this up. It was written by a Christian who said, Christians must not compare themselves with others because comparison is a sin. And I thought, well, now,
How far? Yeah.
It is true that comparison can lead to sin.
Right.
But comparison's a tool. Comparison is just a tool. It's not, and it's not helpful. If you think of it as a sin, does that mean you're never going to do it again?
Right.
It's not even
It's
helpful.
not motivating to change. That was not motivation.
Not at all. Much less helping, steering you in the right direction. But comparison is just a tool.
Yeah.
It's not good or bad. It can be used for good. It can be used for bad.
Yeah.
But as deeply embedded as habits are, they can't just be stopped on a dime.
Right.
The cycle of habits has to be interrupted. And then, I love the way that current day neurological research intersects with ancient wisdom.
Yes.
Many years ago, Thomas Akempis, author of The Imitation of Christ, wrote, "Habit overcomes habit." And that is exactly what
It's what they're finding.
That's what they're finding.
Yeah.
You can't just quit a habit, but you can replace it with a different habit.
Oh, man. Oh, Richella, I knew this conversation was going to be amazing. And you have completely not disappointed me. I mean, just going a few minutes back when you said you are plenty. And those of you who are watching this on video on our membership, I don't know if you can see, but my eyes teared up because Richella looked into the camera and said to me, "You are plenty." So I'm going to take that phrase away again as well today. So I hope you all have been encouraged by what Richella has brought to us today. I know I've been blessed and encouraged. And before we sign off, Richella, I would love if you could just tell us, how can we find you? How can we get your book? Are you on all the socials? What's happening?
Oh, thank you for wanting to find me. Yes, I am. I am just at Richella Parham on Instagram and on Twitter. On Facebook, I'm Richella Parsons Parham. Can also be found at I am an OG blogger. I mean, been blogging for years and years at impartinggrace.com. And I'm still there some. And also there's a website for the book. The book again is Mythical Me, Finding Freedom from Constant Comparison. And you can learn more at richellajparham.com or at mythicalmebook.com. It is available wherever books are sold. And I'm so excited that just recently, so many people have told me that the book would be a good resource for groups.
Oh, nice.
I'm working with IVP to set up a good discount for bulk sales.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. So they're offering. So the book is available directly from University Press, and they're giving me a code which I can provide to you. I'll have to look it up.
Oh yeah, we'll put all that on the blog and in the show notes.
Yeah, and they're offering for I think it's a significant discount for group sales of the book and free shipping. So
oh wow, that's good.
Super nice thing, because a lot of people have said that they really think it would be a good resource for a small group or a Sunday school class or whatever. And because I believe so strongly that the antidote for comparison is community, I love the idea of people going through it together. So,
well, good. Well, thank you again so much for being with us today, Richella. And it was really good.
It's my pleasure.
Really good to chat.
Good to talk with you.
I hope Richella's heartfelt conversation has helped you today. You can tell this is something she's worked on in her own life and that she's offering her wisdom to all of us. So I wanted to let you know something cool. Richella, along with University Press, has graciously given us a PDF of Chapter 1 of her book. You can access this resource by visiting unhurriedliving.com/podcast bonus and get Chapter 1 of Mythical Me. And once you do that, once you're there, you'll get access not only to this book excerpt, but to all of our past podcast resources, as well as future ones as they become available in upcoming podcasts. So again, go to unhurriedliving.com/podcast bonus. And as always, we love connecting with more and more friends like you who want to rest deeper, live fuller, and lead better.